NBC News can now project Joe Biden will be the Democratic presumptive nominee for president. He has now reached the number of delegates, 1,968. That's according to our decision desk, which made that projection within the last hour. Former President Donald Trump could also clinch the Republican presidential nomination tonight. His magic number is 1,215. Now, polls have now been closed for 1 hour in the key swing state of Georgia and in Mississippi. Primary voters are also casting ballots in Washington State and Hawaii, as well as the Northern Mariana Islands, and Democrats abroad are doing that as well. NBC's Blaine Alexander is in Atlanta for us tonight. So, Blaine, NBC News projecting Joe Biden as the winner of the Georgia primary tonight. That was expected, a convincing win there for the president.
Absolutely expected, Aaron, and a very convincing win, something like 96% of the vote against his two challengers. But, you know, already Georgia Democrats are touting this as a victory. We've seen a statement in the past 30 minutes or so from the chairperson of the Georgia Democratic Party, basically saying that back in 2020, it was Georgia that sent Joe Biden to the White House. And now in 2024, they are proud to basically be the state that put him over the edge to officially clinch the Democratic nomination. Now, while we're paying attention to those numbers, though, from Joe Biden, what I'm also watching is, yes, Donald Trump won this state certainly as well tonight on primary night. But what's interesting is that according to NBC News numbers, he took about 85% of the vote. 15% of that vote went to Nikki Haley. That means she took something like 19,000 Georgia votes today. So very interesting. Of course, when you talk about the margin here in Georgia that you know, Aaron, is very, very slim. Joe Biden carried the state by fewer than 12,000 votes several years ago. That's why when I talk with both Democratic and Republican strategists and get out the vote activists, both of them see an opening when it comes to their candidate winning the Peach State in November. Now, when I talk to Republicans, they say that the key is getting those voters in the suburbs, those people who voted for Nikki Haley. I actually spoke with one Republican, and she told me that in order for Trump to win, he's going to have to recapture those voters who voted for him twice, but after January 6th said they want nothing to do with him and decided to cast a ballot for Haley. Aaron.
And I do want to know for our viewers, Blaine, that we can project. NBC News is now also projecting another race here. I think we can put it up on the screen for folks to see. This is, I believe, the contest in Mississippi. And tell me again, we're projecting that Donald Trump has won Mississippi as well. So I want to get that note in for our viewers. I do want to ask you, too, Blaine, about there in Georgia, the protest vote on the Democratic side in the other primaries there in Georgia. I was in Atlanta over the weekend and spoke with one of the state legislators there about this protest vote that was building in that state. This was something that we saw in Michigan, obviously, a few weeks back, a protest vote. Talk to us about what exactly is happening there in Georgia with that as it relates to President Biden.
Yeah, it's something that's gaining steam a lot when it comes to people who are upset with Biden, increasingly upset with Biden, calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. So what we're seeing is that people are going to the polls, but essentially casting blank ballots, trying to send a message that they're not happy with the president and his stance on what's going on. But, you know, I do think that when you talk with Biden advisors, Nikema Williams, for instance, a surrogate for the president and a congresswoman here from Georgia, she makes it clear that they're not necessarily concerned about that. They're not worried about that. What they're focused on is making sure that turnout is what it needs to be in November. They say that they believe that by the time November comes, they're going to drive home the message of getting people out to the ballot. But again, Aaron, 11,779 votes is not a large number. And so when you talk about the possibility of some voters going over to Trump, some voters casting protest ballots, certainly Democrats need every vote that they can get if they hope to keep the state blue in November.
All right, Blaine Alexander for us in Atlanta tonight. Blaine, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.